So, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for being patient with our 2 week lag there. But we're back, and you've had a couple of weeks to sort of get acclimated with the curriculum and with the book. And hopefully, you've had some time to work on some of the homework assignments. And I think we got all the bugs worked out with the emails. So, hopefully we're good to go. So what I want to do tonight is, since it's been a couple of weeks since we've been together, I'd like to know like how everybody's doing. And if you guys are okay, I'd like to just go around and see how the assignments have been going and how you're doing with the process. And then I want you guys to talk a little bit about what you've been able to do with the homework, and let me know kind of what's happening on your end. Okay. If you haven't had a chance to get it done, I would just recommend that you you should be caught up by now, just because it's going to start really moving quickly. And so you're not going to want to have to like backtrack. So if we can go ahead and start. And Brenda, since you're kind of a what do I want to say? Since this is your second time around, I'm going to pick on you first. And so
Okay.
if you don't mind, tell us like how your process is going, and then tell us about where you're at in terms of your assignments and what's resonated with you, what is triggering for you, anything like that. So go for it.
I've done the homework for week 1 and 2,
Mhm.
and I don't know for sure which loss I'm going to work on. I think I've settled on loss of what I thought life would be like at this point.
Mm,
And so,
mm,
yeah, because it's a lot different. It's a very, very big difference, and it's a lot of what's pertinent right now.
mhm.
And yeah, it's kind of been like, I think I've kind of been numb since the end of last year, even though that sounds awful. It's October. But anyway,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And kind of go over a little bit of the homework. Tell me a little bit more about what's going on within that process.
Okay. Let's see. I grew up with don't cry, or I'll give you something to cry about. And you need to grieve alone. Don't
Mm,
feel bad. You need to just grieve alone and get it done. Do something different and
mhm,
just give it time and be strong.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
Um, and this too shall pass.
mhm, mhm. Yeah.
And, like, you should be happy about where you're at, as if I'm doing the loss, of what my future is not. I'm not saying that right. If my
Mhm,
loss is going to be what I expected, I've lost what I expected to happen. You should be happy where you're at.
mm. Right.
You've got a lot. You shouldn't have anything. And notes on approval is I'm fine.
Mhm, mhm,
Smile all the time, no matter what.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What does it feel like to know that it's okay um to not be okay all the time?
Um, how does that feel?
Yeah, like does it feel kind of freeing to know there's a different narrative that you can adopt
Yeah,
for yourself?
it is. It's like a kind of a comforting, you know, like I don't have to work quite so hard at it, all the time.
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Takes a lot of emotional energy to talk yourself into feeling a different way than what you really feel.
Yeah. I've
If
done
it's
that all my life, but
Yeah. And is it even possible?
no. It's
Not
not,
really.
you can try, but then you're still, people still know,
Right.
no matter how hard you try.
Yeah. And you lose that authenticity, right? Kind of like last time
Yes.
we talked, right? Like the authenticity in terms of what's really true for us, right? And I think that's a huge part of what we do in this class is we really try to like hone in on what's authentic for us, like what's true for me, right? Instead of, well, you should, or this will get better, or it really wasn't that big of a deal, or, whatever, like whatever the the messages that is someone's trying to make you feel better usually,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And like the book says, and you've said, be honest with yourself. Just
Right.
be real, be honest.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's kind of counterintuitive, right? Because we're brought up to not be honest. We're brought
Right.
up to try to create a feeling or create an existence for ourselves that may or may not be true for us. And so now we're kind of like challenging that and going back and kind of saying, well, I've been taught my whole life that I'm supposed to just, be okay with whatever happens, or it wasn't that big of a deal, or like to minimize. And so now we're kind of going
Yes.
backwards and going, no, wait, that's, yeah, it's a bit counterintuitive for sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Thanks, Brenda. All right. Who's next?
I'll go next.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Good evening. This is my first time being on here because I think the email got mixed up. So by the time I finally find it, I was away on vacation. So I'm originally from Surrey, BC, Canada.
Okay.
But I was able to get caught up with the homework.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was able, and I saw the other videos that was posted.
Okay.
So I was able to watch those over and over again, which is great. Yeah.
Great.
I was
Welcome.
able to watch them over and over and over again. And I even watched one while I was falling asleep. So did this.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Well,
yeah.
welcome. We're so happy to have you.
Yeah.
Where do you live in Canada?
Yes, I live in Surrey, BC, Canada.
Sir, where is that? Cervisi.
Vancouver.
Ah, okay. Got it.
Yeah. So when
Yes,
I
I
say
was just
Vancouver,
there.
it's more familiar. Yeah. People are
Yes.
more familiar with Vancouver.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Tell me
So
a little bit about your background. Why are you here? Let's like kind of back up a little bit. Tell us a
yeah.
bit about why you signed up for the class and then kind of catch us up on where you're at.
Yeah, well, I am a past student of SHBI. Originally, when I was living in Toronto, Canada, Toronto, Ontario, I just stumbled across SHBI courses because I was typing up for Bible courses. And so I started taking their courses, way back. And so I've been following and following and following and continue taking even their courses for using it for resources. And I keep following up. And then I kept asking them, when will you guys be doing any online courses? Because there were some of the courses that I wanted, but it wasn't offered online at the time. So, but I kept following up and I think my teacher is it Francis? Yeah, she was the one that I usually keep in touch with. And every now and then I reach out to her. So the other day when these courses were on, I went on and they were offering the grief counseling. And I said, oh God, thank you, Jesus. So you're right. So now I'm living in Surrey, BC. I took training I had my own grief, but it's just recently I learned that I was grieving all my life, that I've been grieving all my life. So my background, I started doing counseling courses, and then the Lord somewhat led me to I went back and I took mental health training. Then I went back and I took counseling, and that was all the Lord's doing. I can't take credit for that, although I didn't want to go down that road. I wanted to become a nurse. So when I heard Brenda talking about grieving what I thought I would become, that yeah, there's still some bubble tears there, but not as much as before. So I took counseling, and then it just recently in February of this year, fast forwarding, I realized that, like I said, I've been grieving all my life, that I was actually experiencing grief when my father died when I was 8. I was 8 years old when my dad died. And then for some reason it hit me. Oh my God. I think the Lord wants me to go into grief counseling. Yeah,
Oh,
February 15, 2023, I was in my lunchroom and then I saw this book about grieving, recovering from the losses in life, and I picked it up and it was right there and then. Um, I realized that the Lord wants me to go into grief counseling because I wrote a book on flourishing in the midst of adversity, Roses Among
oh,
Thorns. But then I realized that the book is actually, I was actually talking about grief. So I have to go back and rewrite it because it was such a huge light bulb for
oh,
me.
uh-huh.
I've experienced so many losses. And I said, I felt sorry for my mom because she didn't know that what I was, the behavior that I was exhibiting, that I was dealing with loss. So may her
Yeah,
soul rest in peace. But yeah,
yeah,
so I
yeah.
now want to do grief counseling my own. I'm on my own journey as well,
Mhm.
but I also want to do grief counseling because I believe most trauma, if not all, grief is at the bottom. But grief is at the root.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's where I'm at right now.
That's awesome. And kind of like what I shared before, this course is so
Yes.
different because it's very concrete. There's a real actual method to what we do.
Yes.
It's not just yeah. So I think that hopefully this will be something that you can use as a tool
Yes.
to help. But I love how we like integrate it for ourselves first and
It
then
is.
process our own stuff. Do you know what loss that you would like to process in this class?
I think because I've had so many losses, my mom, so I lost my dad, then I lost my innocence, then I
Uh,
lost my marriage,
yeah.
then I lost a child. So but I realized that I had to go back to address the first loss, which was my dad.
Yes.
So they couldn't even touch those other losses. I wanted to touch those, but my counselor said no, I had to go back to the first.
Yes.
But
Very wise. Yes.
I
Yeah.
had to go back to the first loss. So I'm kind of, I touched on the other losses, but I realized that although the first loss trickled into all the other losses.
Mhm. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're
So
going to
yeah,
focus on dad. And at
yeah,
8 years old, that's very young. Okay.
yeah, 8 years old. But now, so it comes and goes in bits and pieces because I'm now kind of dealing with the loss of the career I did not get to really fully
Mhm.
experience. So, but that desire is slowly going. But then I realized that counseling is kind of in the medical field. That kind of counseling is applied health. So
Mhm.
it is still in the medical. So
Yep.
I'm no longer as angry at God as I used to be. I hope it's okay to say that because
Of
my
course.
life took, when I had my first child, a loss, that pregnancy wasn't planned. And then my life took another turn. So that in itself didn't really get to experience what it was like to be a nurse, although I took 1 year of nursing. And so my life just took
Yeah.
another turn. So they come in bits and pieces, but the main thing that um, I'm now coming to peace that it's possible that God didn't want me to be a nurse and that I really wanted to care for people, but nursing was probably not the route, but that was the only care that I knew of when I was young.
Right. So when you going back to the loss of your dad, do you remember what people tried to say to you to comfort you, and was it helpful or not helpful?
It was not helpful at all.
Mm.
I wish my mom didn't take his picture because back home, originally I'm from Jamaica, so I wish my mom left his picture in the cabinet because back home, when your dad, when adults die, they take the pictures out of the cabinet or they remove anything that is of memory. They move them so fast. And yes, they remove them very fast. I wish people would stop coming telling me he's sleeping
Mm.
and mixed messages that he's sleeping, but he's not going to come back. So that message was the day of his funeral, they said that he's sleeping and then he's going in the ground. And I'm thinking that he's cold, he's going to need me. And the mixed messages, and some would say, well, you know, I'm now have to grow up, I now have to be a big girl because daddy is no longer here. So it was a lot of mixed messages. So I kind of grew up thinking that adults are liars because
Yes.
they don't tell the truth,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
That they're liars because they say my dad is sleeping, but then they're putting him in the ground. So I'm saying, wake him up. So
Yeah.
my 8-year-old brain at the time just could not comprehend all the messages that it was getting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so that's where it all began.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Wow. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so
Yeah,
glad you're here. Thank you
yeah,
for letting us in.
you're
So,
welcome.
hey. All right. Thanks. All right. Somebody else?
Maybe
I'll
this
go
is
ahead.
Diane. Oh, go ahead, Nanette.
Go ahead, Nanette.
Well, like Brenda Marie, I had a hard time deciding which loss to really process. I wish I had done what Brenda said, just how life is not exactly what I thought it was going to be. That would have kind of encompassed everything. But I kind of focused on what's really been hard for me to process is my relationship with my dad. Um, my dad is right now in a memory care facility. He still knows who I am and everything, but the relationship from the get go was a little different. He had PTSD, and as I understand it now, which I didn't then, was he had to stay busy so that he didn't think about um, the things that he kept remembering. Um, so he worked nights when I was growing up, and he would stay very busy on the weekend. So he would come in the evening and we might play cards or dominoes or something, but that was pretty much my interaction with him growing up. And that was about it. And he was loving, but he was definitely ruled by the fear factor too. So I was always a little scared of him. And as we went along in life, basically, I was kind of there to help him do whatever it is he needed done, whether it was finding a part, whether it was, it was like I was, and I used the words a few years ago is like I would tell him, I'm like, I'm not your servant, I'm your daughter. But he needed more help to be able to do things. He didn't know how to use the computer at all, and we all know you can't do much of anything without a computer.
Yes.
And I took care of all their finances and things like that. But when my mom died in 2018, he went a little berserk. He turned suicidal. And I was taking him, I remember the month before COVID really kicked in, February. I took him to 20 doctor's appointments trying to figure out. And in the month of February, that's a pretty good task to get in 20 appointments. But I tried everything trying to get to the bottom of it because he was trying to build a safe house in his house. He was trying to get more guns. He was trying, just I just so many things. And I tricked him into getting into a facility, and he was out within 3 weeks. And over the course of 6 months, I had to call the police like 9 times. But and during that, I was trying to get guardianship over him, which is expensive. And he hit me in June of that year. Not enough to hurt me physically or anything, but that was kind of like the turning point. My emotions just kind of turned off. And he has been in a facility since July of, what was that, 2020. Extremely angry with me up until this year. And this year, it has totally changed to where I still, when I go in to see him, I'm going in to see him every week. And it's kind of like, I feel it's like my job to go. And I don't want him to pass with me not seeing him. But I hate going. And I'm always upset coming home. Because I'm still kind of getting those tasks every time I see him. There's something that needs to be done every week that I see him. But I really related to these energy relievers, especially like the food. Anytime I would get stressed, it was Coke and chocolate immediately. And then it's kind of worked into some of the same as him, just staying busy, just constantly staying busy so that you don't have time to think.
Right.
And I've been trying the last few weeks to try not to go to that chocolate and the Coke, and try to think of doing something nice for myself.
Okay.
Instead of kind of dwelling over what could have been. He still has his older memories, still knows who I am, but the short-term memory is gone. But it's just trying to figure out, before he passes, he's 92 now. How can I kind of put that relationship in perspective and be satisfied with it? I guess that's the best way to say it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like you find a sense of completion with the relationship and what is transpired, and that's exactly what we do in this class. That's exactly it. And I
Yeah.
think being able to identify what your energy relieving behaviors are, it just kind of, that's sort of like your just a way of you kind of having an awareness that maybe there's something else going on for you that you're avoiding or don't want to really face or feel, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's natural when there's a lot of pain surrounding a dynamic like this, especially for you, because you haven't actually lost him. So he's still here and it's a viable relationship. So I would imagine there's some level of hope that maybe it could look a little differently. So whether that is or isn't the case, it doesn't have to prevent you from being able to complete your part of this process, right? And my guess is that there's some stuff that's pretty early for you, that was a disappointment, it sounds like. And probably just more because of his limitation, not because he's a bad person, but because kind of like what we talked about the first and second week, right? We're all limited based on how we all grew up and what tools we were given and what we weren't. So the point is in what I want to encourage you to do is focus on you. and your feelings and your experiences. It's very natural to minimize our own experience, especially if we're trying to protect the relationship. But I want to encourage you to focus on you and your feelings as you process a lot of the interactions and memories and stuff with your dad. Because it's not about fault finding. It's about you being able to be authentic with yourself and be comfortable with any feelings that come up. And some of those feelings can be painful, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that I tell my friends is I felt like when I lost my mom, I lost both of them at the same time.
Right.
And the most hurtful thing that I was told as I was going through that time of with him during COVID, when on those 6 months, well, a couple months before COVID, but those first 6 months of 2020, it was when I had someone, and I mean, there was all sorts of things. He thought I was poisoning him. He thought, just so many different things. I was afraid to say anything. I'm afraid he would just fly off the handle. But a friend of mine said, "Oh, but at least you still have your dad." And
Mm.
I thought, okay, one, it shut me down. I'm like, I'm not going to talk to you anymore about this because you don't get it.
Mhm.
And it felt worse than not having my dad because it's like you've ruined the memory of him.
Mm.
So
Wow. Yeah. 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 That shame piece just is devastating. You should be whatever it is, right?
mhm,
Like Brenda said, you should be happy, right?
yeah.
You should be happy, thankful that you still have your dad. I mean, yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I'm actually excited for you because, I'm not sure if I've said it in this class, but sometimes I think grief, especially when we move toward our feelings of our loss and our disappointments, it's like it's really a gift. I want to write a book called The Gift of Grief because I feel like the gift is that we get parts of ourself that maybe we never had before.
Mm.
We get emotional parts of ourself that we were
Mhm.
never allowed to have. Disappointment, sadness, discouragement, right? All the things that we were
Mhm.
shamed into not allowing ourselves to have.
Yeah.
And so it's a gift because they're parts of you and they're important parts, and God gave them to us for a reason. So yeah, I think you're going to get a lot of gifts of yourself back. Maybe for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Nanette. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so you know what your STIRBs are, right? Your stress relieving
Yes.
behaviors. And I didn't get to lecture on that. I'm going to lecture on that a little bit tonight. But I'm glad you guys have picked some of that stuff up in the book. That's good. If you've been able to identify them, that's really good. And you're on your way. Okay, who's next?
Kathy, could I say something real quick?
Sure, of course.
You did mention the gift of pain and grief, and that was huge for me to think of it as a gift. That's beautiful. I volunteered for hospice for a few years, and then I also worked in a memory care unit for a year. And there was a video that this one nurse makes. Her name is a little different. It's called Teepa Snow, and she is the whisperer to dementia. She is amazing, and you can see her on YouTube. And it's Teepee, Teepa, no, Teepa, and then her last name is Snow. She is amazing. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about her
Oh, that's
because
great.
she helps calm you. She helps you at least deal in a different way with it. It really is tremendous, a tremendous gift to look at some of those videos.
Okay.
Even if you can't buy the DVDs,
Mhm.
you could at least see some of them on video on
Oh,
YouTube.
I'll have to look her up. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, who's next?
I'll go next, Kathy. This is Diana.
Hi, Diana.
Hi. When I was when I was looking over and reading the lessons and so forth, I'm like Marie. I had to go back to the very beginning of when it all started. And from year 2016 to 2023, it's like for me, I've had a loss almost every year, be it death, a medical, the hurricane took everything from me, and I just moved to this town where I am now. And it's for me like rebuilding my life and even trying to find a church home, which I found one recently. But as I was reading, I kept going back to the thoughts of my great grandparents. And my great grandparents, they raised the first four of us. I'm the fourth girl in the family of 12 children. And the four of us, we were raised by our great grandparents before I even knew my parents. And when my grandparents passed away, my parents moved into the house that we were living in and they took over. Well, I didn't know them. And I didn't know they were there to stay. I didn't know my mom and dad. I was about 4 or 5 years old before I knew of them. I was 5 before I knew of them. And I made the chart. I made the chart on when everything happened in my life, when it began, and the years that it happened. Because what I found was when I was reading, I kept going back to the death of my great grandparents, and I saw everything. I saw when my great grandmother, how she passed away, and my great granddad, how he passed away. My parents took me out there to the house that he lived in, and I had to sit on the bed while he was passing away, and I couldn't understand what was going on. And it was devastating. And my thought was, why would they do that? Didn't they understand that was hurting for me? How could I couldn't understand what was going on. And they said, you'll be okay. They have to die or you'll get over it. You know, they used all of those things with me. And for me growing up, I kept saying that was cruel. That was hurtful. They could have handled that quite differently. You know, it could have been, why were they not more sympathetic? But then I thought they didn't understand how to handle the situation. They did the best they could by taking me out there to be with my great granddad, not realizing how it was affecting me. And so what I found myself doing was when I get into that mode, I would eat. I would spend lots of money, go shopping for didn't need it, just go shopping. I wouldn't talk to people. I would stay to myself quite a bit. I would take road trips and no one knew where I was going. I would just take off and just go. And I don't know, it just seems that I have to go back to the very beginning of my great grandparents' deaths in order to get past what I'm dealing with. I don't know any other way to do it because it's not even the loss of my marriage that affects me. I'm over that pretty much. But when my mind keeps going back to the death of my grandparents, which was my mom and my dad, that's where my issue is. And for me, everything that's happened, that's a loss. It's devastating. So I've had to take these last few weeks and say, when I feel like I want to eat, I just leave the house. I don't eat. I won't eat. If I end up at a store, I don't take my purse inside. I just go and do the walk. You know, I'm changing things as I go, you know, day by day. I'm just taking one day at a time and trying to work through it. You know, so that's pretty much where I am.
Great. Wow. Yeah. And, you know, I would encourage that because it is, you're right. It's like the narrative begins when we're really, 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 really small. And the messages that we tell ourselves, whether the world is safe, whether the world isn't safe, whether people really have the ability to take care of us, whether they're not trustworthy, right? It's like so many of those messages we tell ourselves are going to impact the decisions we make for our future and how we are in our world, right? And so I think you're absolutely spot on in terms of grieving the loss of your grandparents, because that's probably the place to start, especially if
Mhm.
you had that much loss. And my
Right.
guess is that every single loss that you have just reignites that original hurt and confusion.
It comes back to mind. Each time it comes back to mind.
Sure.
Why can't they be here with me? I understand about death. I understand that, but my thought is, why can't they be here with me? That was my strength.
Yeah.
That was my foundation.
Yep.
And they left me with nothing.
Mhm. Right.
May I just say something quickly? You said something just now. I lost my home in 2008, and I'm now 58, right? So 2008 wasn't very long ago, right? And I remember standing outside and I'm saying, Daddy, I was shocked. I mean, I was shocked. And I actually shut down that party because I was saying, Daddy, Daddy, where are you? I wish you were here. I wish you. And I found myself becoming angry. And my mom was alive at the time because my mom passed in 2010. But I didn't even understand where that was coming from. Here I am, a big adult. My dad died 40 something years ago, and in 2008, 2009, I'm crying for him and asked him, where are you? I wish you were here. So as I think it's Diane, as she said that, it brought back that, yeah,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
went to the first place of my loss.
Yeah, it comes back. Yeah, you have to go back. You got to deal with what starts it all before you can, get to the finish line.
Well, and I think what's happening there is that, and this is why we do a graph from our first memory, because what's happening is that each of us has this, younger part of us inside of us, right? And as we go back and remember things, there might be different parts of us that get triggered and get ignited, right? And so, for you, Marie, it might be like that younger part of you that wished that your dad could have been there to protect you and to prevent you from this horrific loss. It's
Yes.
that younger part of us just cries out for
Mm,
for someone to
Nine,
rescue
read
us
out Federated.
and protect us.
Chairman
And yeah. And so it's a very real, because it's coming from, that's what I mean. That part of you is your gift to yourself. Like that little 3-year-old or 5-year-old or 7-year-old, it deserves to have a voice. It deserves to be acknowledged and to be valued. And that's why we talk about when people give you pat answers or tell you to just make it happen or buck up, because those parts in that little 3 or 5 or 7-year-old aren't valued, right? So we have to go back when we do grief work and hold those little ones close, and we sort of reparent them and tell them that they matter.
Yeah.
That's sort of what grief work is. And there are lots of like therapies that do that as well. But the idea is that we have to be able to value those little ones that are in us, right? And those little ones, if I like to, this is kind of silly, okay, but so if you guys kind of feel like emotions are coming up and they feel like really young emotions, right? Kind of like what Marie was talking about. So say that was a 5-year-old emotion, but you're 42, okay?
Yeah.
But that 5-year-old emotion is called like terror. Like you're just so afraid, you're so scared, and you feel like you're like vulnerable, like a 3-year-old, right?
Yes.
You ever go to a drugstore, this sounds really silly, but if you ever go to a drugstore like a CVS or Walgreens or something, and they have these little tiny like stuffed animals, and
Yes.
sometimes they're really funny looking, but some of them have the cutest little looks on their faces, and you might find one that looks a lot like Fear. And you pick that
Yeah.
one up and go, oh my gosh, your name is Fear, and you are 3 years old. Okay. You take that home, and that becomes a little representation of who she is, that she was 3 years old and she was so afraid.
Mhm.
And you learn how to remember who she is and value her. So the next time she comes up for you when you're an adult, you know what she is and who she is and what she looks like and where she came from. And you hold
Mhm.
on to her, and you embrace her, and you value her. See, our tendency is to stuff it down
Yeah.
and to go underground with it and to minimize. So we're trying to back up that process where we're not doing that anymore. And so it's just it's a kind of a fun reminder for how to value those parts of ourselves. Anyway, that wasn't in the curriculum, but I just thought I'd throw it out there because it's kind of a good intervention. But anyway, so okay, well, thank you, Diana, and for sharing that. It sounds like that's a good place to start, and we will help you through that. Okay, who's next? Okay, yeah, go ahead, Nancy. Oh, you're muted. I think you're muted.
The discussion is so helpful. It's just wonderful, and basically this is a symptom, that I have, that I'm going to keep that happy face on no matter what.
Wow.
But all the reminders about going back to childhood, and because I had not been able to figure out what loss to focus on. But, it clearly has to be the loss of trust and affection from my father, and the lack of acknowledgement or whatever. And then, so I am a fierce preschool teacher, and little children, that I want to tell them that God loves them and protect them. And so I see, based on the discussion tonight, that I'm doing that because of the lack of care that I had. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, for the recording, she was holding up a happy smiley face mug that she had. Yeah.
Because I keep it, we Christians, we learn early on to be experts at church face. And I just thought, anytime you ask them how are they, and they say fine, I mean, we need, to not let that pass, because, like you pointed out in the last session, we're not all fine, that we need to care more than that and not accept that.
Right. So what would you say is your energy relieving behavior? What do you do?
I eat. Doesn't everybody eat? And shop. So that was really a good thought, And so I try to do something, but my house is not really big, so you can't walk from point A to B without walking by the kitchen, that's, with food hanging out. So I have to not bring it home from the store. Or if I really don't want to eat it, I not only have to put it in the trash, but I have to run water on it and put it in the trash.
Wow. Well, and it makes sense, right? Because food, I love to eat too. My password is love to eat. Okay. So I'm just telling you guys. Now I have to change it because I told everybody. But it's like, it makes sense, right? And I have struggled with dysthymic depression pretty much my whole life, which is like dysthymic depression is like a low level fever, right? It's like a low level depression that's just always there. And I think a lot of us that have loss and grief from a very young age probably have a diagnosable dysthymic level of depression. So what that means is that, so people who don't struggle with depression at all, like their baseline might be up here, right? So like their normal mood is like even, and it might kind of dip a little, right? And they just kind of have bad days or whatever, and it might go kind of high, right? So, but it kind of stays in that baseline. People who are dystymically depressed, or in my opinion, who have trauma from an early age that they've never been able to work through, a lot of times they're dystymically depressed, which means that the mood is sort of like the baseline is lower. So when you have a bad day, or like struggle with something, like your baseline is here, and so you may kind of dip down, but that dip may look like, oh, I just can't get out of bed today, or I really don't want to face this day. Like I have to really work at getting back up to here, to my baseline, right? And so when you're dystymically depressed, your serotonin and dopamine, which are the good chemicals that go on in your brain, like they're limited. But what happens when we eat something sweet or good or anything, right? Our serotonin and dopamine levels go higher because we want to feel good, right? So it's natural, if we've had trauma or loss that we haven't ever processed and we have kind of a baseline that's lower, a lot of us are going to want to eat because it makes us feel better. I mean, it just kind of biologically makes sense, right? And I'll just give my little plug for antidepressants. I'm so sorry if this is wrong, but when you take an antidepressant, you go from dystymically depressed down here, where your baseline, up to where the normal baseline is for most people. And what happens is you have like little dendrites in your brain, and one part of the brain is spurting out serotonin and dopamine. The other part of the brain is soaking it up. So you're kind of doing this when you are not depressed. People who are depressed, this still happens. The serotonin and dopamine still spurts out, but this doesn't get soaked up as much. So you might be having it soaked up, maybe, I mean, it might look like this, right? So it's there. It's just not being reuptake. It's not being absorbed into your system. Antidepressants create this ability for this to work properly. It just absorbs what's naturally happening. That's why antidepressants are not habit forming, because you're not creating a synthetic chemical. Like this is natural. This is what's coming out of here is natural. And it just allows the reuptake to work properly so that you're doing this. And so you go from here to here. Anyway, so it just makes sense that a lot of us who have early trauma and early grief and loss are probably suffering from a low level of depression as well. That's not unusual. Yeah.
Could
Nancy.
you spell dysthymic or whatever?
Yeah, they call it dysthymic depression, dystamic, I think. I don't know. I'd have to spell it out. Very visual.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. dystamic. Yeah. So, okay. Thank you so much. So Nancy, was there anything that people would tell you that was helpful or not helpful as you were growing up?
Oh, I had the classic, don't cry or I'll give you something to cry about. And just not an acknowledgement of feelings or an expression of feelings that from a household that was very work oriented, that much activity all the time. If my mother saw anybody not doing something, she gave us work to do, was her solution to about everything. So you learn to stay out of sight unless you wanted to work. But I was very work oriented. So, and I was valued for work. But don't remember the six of us, we really don't recall any emotional reassurance or whatever. But yet we're all to this day very hard workers. And the cup, kind of represents, so, and I have happy faces everywhere. So, but that's all, I can see that's a great big crutch.
Right. Well, and I think it's valuable because I think, mental health,
Mhm.
people who have um who are healthy emotionally, they have the ability to be flexible, right? They have the ability to maintain happy feelings, but you also have the ability to sustain sadness and disappointment, and right. So there's a balance there, right? So you've got a lot of the one, right?
Right,
The other it wasn't valued. So now it's like finding that balance.
right.
Yeah.
And I think I deserve to find that.
You do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think a lot of times parents, and we as parents and then our own parents, a lot of times they're just so uncomfortable with their own feeling states
Mhm.
that having a child that has an emotion that they're not comfortable with is really scary for them.
Mhm.
And so they try to talk us out of it or try to, beat it out of us or whatever, right? Because it's uncomfortable for them. It's not as much about us as it is about them alleviating their own discomfort. So, yeah. Okay, cool. All right, who's next? Thanks, Nancy. Yes, go ahead, Suzanne. Oh, I think you're muted.
There.
There we
Okay.
go.
Um, I have um, I guess a lifetime of grief. I have a lot of incidents, a lot of things that have happened in my life since I was a little bitty girl, and I had gone to a previous class some time back, and the counselor said that I was kind of like a little mommy all my life.
Mm.
Uh, are you there? Okay. I
Yep.
was like a little mommy,
Mhm.
and my parents had a lot of major struggle in their marriage, uh, to the point of some violence, and I had a childhood trauma, and somehow I've always felt responsible for the family or responsible for the well-being of the family, or oh, dad's not happy, oh, mom's not happy, um, which quite often they weren't. They were separated a lot. I was the oldest, second to oldest of 7 children. And so I grew up to kind of be a very, what I think is a responsible person, and what I think is a person that has to look good and fix things and perfectionist type thing, though I'm far from perfect. I strive for it. And I just feel like it's been a grief all of my life to carry that weight. And when that counselor called me a little mommy, I thought, gosh, I think she really hit it. And I felt responsible for the whole climate of my home. And then my dad, both of my parents are deceased now, but when my dad died, I went to pieces. He died a tragic death. Uh, and I went to pieces. And I thought, well, gosh, why did this happen? Why did he suffer like this? And why did he go through this? And we filed a lawsuit because it was a negligence type death. And we didn't get very far with it. And the lawyer told me that I don't have any basis for a lawsuit, but we continued and we continued and we got a little something. So that told me if we got something, there must have been some basis somewhere. So I was trying to fix the lawyer too. And anyway, it took me a long time, and it seems like at that time in my life, which was 22 years ago, then my health started going downward every year, and so I have a lot of grief, a lot of suffering, a lot of pain.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, it sounds like you've carried a lot. Yeah. So what do you do to kind of alleviate some of that for yourself, that pain?
I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of research. It seems like I'm always trying to learn or find things or find something to idealize.
Mhm.
Um, not necessarily fantasize, but idealize, like, you know, well, that's the perfect thing, or that's the perfect thing, or that's the, you know, and then I do stuff like, um, well, I used to go shopping a lot, but my health is not there anymore. But I used to shop a lot, and I would shop with my mom, and I missed her terribly when she passed in 2018, like Nanette's mom, and I missed her so terribly. She was just right there with me all the time when I wasn't working. And then this illness that I have now, I lost my job 9 years ago. So it's like spiral, spiral, spiral. I'm
Yeah.
happy because I'm with my grandkids now, but my life was a little bit different.
Mhm. Yeah. And it sounds like, you know, you, from a very young age, you had to find ways to solve problems, and you were gifted with a good mind that allowed you to research and to find things um, that were going to solve it for you, right? And we call those coping mechanisms, right? And they're really good. And sometimes we rely on those so heavily that we forget there's other parts of us that are just as capable, right? Other parts of our personality, other parts of who we are that are valuable. And so it sounds like your coping mechanism in terms of being able to problem solve is still really in place.
So I
So
was determined,
yeah.
no drugs, no alcohol, no this, no that.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
my marriage was not going to be like my mom and dad's marriage. And I'm married 49 years now.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. Well, so who were you going to focus on in terms of your loss? Because we're going to have you do a relationship graph. So we want to think about what relationship do you feel like you want to process first in terms of your losses? What do you think?
Well, I don't know how to do that. I mean, like myself, or is that weird?
No.
My reactions, the way I internalize all that stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
or I could just do my parents.
Well, you
Family.
mentioned it sounded like there was a lot behind you missing your mom. So maybe you could focus on that relationship.
Okay.
Okay. Because my guess is that as you focus on mom, it's probably going to bring stuff around for you that's going to resonate with you in terms of feeling connected to her in many ways. And my guess is that there's probably a lot that's going to parallel.
That's really something that you said that, because I feel bad saying this, but she used to ask us as a child, when she and dad got their divorce, which one were we going to choose? So that's kind of amazing that you would say that. And I gravitated to her because I needed my mommy.
Right. Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. All right. You guys are hanging in there. I know this is heavy stuff, right? It is. But it's healing, I promise.
I have a question.
Yes.
My question is, can the inability we have of processing grief stem from the fact that people at an early age have told us not to feel bad, um, or don't feel bad, don't cry?
Exactly.
Mm. Okay.
And if that person, usually for most of us, it was a parent,
Yes.
if that's the case, then that's probably the one that you want to focus on in terms of grieving, because we grieve the loss of a hope, dream, or expectation, right? So
Or the
Yeah.
other one is being strong, or you have
Yes.
to be strong.
Yes. Right.
So
And how, and
it
how old were
seems,
Mhm. Go ahead.
it seems like um, it kind of puts you in a place where you push everything down, or you don't allow yourself to feel certain things.
Yes.
And then when you do, they're so overwhelming. You can't process it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Can I say something?
Mhm.
I was when I was reading that part, um, I felt I felt robbed of my emotions, and my development was held hostage um, for all this time. And now that I am learning how to use those emotions or kind of control them because they're so underdeveloped,
Mhm.
you it's hard. And so sometimes you don't know the correct terminology for the age to say.
Mhm.
And I find myself saying, no, I don't like that. Or that hurts.
Mhm.
And as an adult, we don't say those words. We say, oh, the pain was agonizing. Like we'll be able to explain the emotion that we're feeling. And the only emotions that I can say is that hurts. I don't like that. And I'm like, all these years, I couldn't even say that. And now that I'm learning how to understand the emotions that have been underdeveloped and trying to control them and develop them and then use them properly, that can just take you out, because they're so underdeveloped. And so we look like maybe 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, depending on the age. And it feels embarrassing,
Mhm.
but it's not.
Mhm.
It is something that our parents did because their parents did, and so this was all learned behavior that was passed on to us. And you were absolutely right. When the child expressed those emotions, we will say, can you not do that? I found myself telling my son, it's okay to cry.
Mhm.
It's okay. And I would sit in silence with him if he was, feeling the pain. But I try not to suppress his emotions, because for one, he has autism, and so he had to learn the emotions. And so that's how I kind of learned mine. And I didn't realize that they were underdeveloped until now. I know the words, but they don't come out. What comes out are those lower level vocabulary words that maybe a 3 to
Yeah.
maybe 5 or 6-year-old would say.
But the process is that you felt it and you were able to express it.
Yeah, so what I do now is I definitely say I don't like it. And then it just takes me a longer time to process it. And so as I'm writing it down, you can see the maturity as I go down in the writing, because my brain has processed it, and I've cottoned up with the vocabulary. And so now it start off, I didn't like how that made me feel. And then I describe the emotion, I give the emotion a name, and then I'll take it, a little further. And um so that's how I'm understanding the emotion and pushing through them. And that's how I survive
Yep.
daily.
Yeah.
I have to write every single day.
Latre, who are you going to who are you going to grieve the loss? What loss?
It's not a loss yet. It's my mom's my mom's and our relationship. And um death for me is different. I tell people this all the time. My mom and my dad talked about death as I grew up. So I thank them for that. That's one thing they did not shelter from me. And so when death occurred, we talked about it. It was just the grieving part was difficult for everyone. And so we didn't necessarily process the grief, but we talked about death and where they go. I'm a preacher's kid, and so that that topic was not off limits. And so going to funerals wasn't it was normal for me. And so I'm learning to I process death differently than others, because at an early age I was taught how to kind of process it. But my mom is the one that I have the relationship with that draws out triggers, and then the underdeveloped emotions comes from her because she was emotionally unavailable. And so
It's
because
funny. Go ahead. Go ahead.
because she was if you don't show me any emotions, I think that's normal.
Mhm. Mhm. So when you were taught, quote, taught
Uh-huh.
how to grieve, was it a cognitive process or an emotional one?
Um,
The teaching.
it was kind of both. They told me I could cry,
Mhm.
and that was normal.
Okay.
And the processing it was just I they always went to heaven. Like that was the thing. They always went to heaven. And so they never said, "Oh, he's gone away." They used the word died,
Mhm.
and we're not going to see him anymore. And then I experienced some death when I was in elementary school. I had two elementary school friends who passed away in the same school year. And so we talked about it in school because we lost two friends. And so um, I had to learn with other friends how to grieve. And so, like I said, death for me was is a little bit different in grieving. It's just they're no longer here is the part that is kind of
Mhm.
hurtful, because it's like 1 minute you were just here. And then you're gone. I didn't say this 2 weeks ago, but the day that we started class, I believe, um, my cousin passed away. And how he passed away is they saw him leave to go to work, and they never saw him come back home. And so no one knew he was in the house. And so my cousin comes home from vacation, and she smells the odor,
Oh.
and it was him. And so the whole entire family is just kind of distraught. And that one's probably the one that's I'm having a hard time processing, because it's like you were only 35 years old and you died, and no one knew you were there. No one knows why you passed away. It was a lot of unanswered questions. And so that is going to take a little longer, because we want answers that maybe the medical people will be able to give us, but we won't know the answer to, like, what happened, why didn't you say anything, or what was going on. And so those are the things that it's alarming. And um, the family member who house he was staying with, it was two other family members in the home. No one knew he was there, and so the whole entire time my aunt was there while he was downstairs dead. And
Oh,
and so that's she's like, I wish she said something told her to go check on him and to see where he was, but the alarm system ring camera didn't show him coming home, and so she was like, he's not home. um Unfortunately, that it was broken, um and so they didn't know he was at home, and those are the unanswered things, and so that one is probably the one I'm grieving the most right now.
okay. Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Nancy, did you have something you wanted to say? No? Okay. Lillian, let's go back to you, okay?
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about your process with what you've been working on and any kind of behaviors you've noticed, or kind of tell me a little about your process.
The what I've said, that you don't realize that you don't know how to process the grief, and it goes back to that, to what you've learned at an early age. Don't feel, don't cry, or this is gonna pass, or time heals all things. um and that's when I know that I've not processed the grief of a lot of things.
Do you know what relationship you want to focus on?
My mom
Your mom.
had passed away recently.
Yeah, that's what I kind of thought, but I want to make sure. Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Hi.
Hi, Charlotte.
Hi. So, with me, like with the first class, what I said, I actually feel like I've recovered from my grief, and the grief is the divorce that I can identify. I feel like I've recovered from it. I feel like I've processed it, and I feel like I'm done processing. I think I had joined the class because I'm at the point where I don't want to be married and anymore. And so I joined the class to identify why. So more recently, I've been trying to find out what the reason is. And the only thing that I can identify, so I was thinking about maybe my reasons for marrying in the first place was probably to have children. And I have children, so maybe that's why I don't see the need to be married again. So I've given it more thought, because I really don't feel like I'm still grieving. Like everybody says, I'm very forgiving. And usually when something happens to me, I forgive very easily, and I love very easily, and I recover very easily. So as I'm thinking about everything, I know that there's no pain. When it happened, like I've gone through all of that already. Like when it happened, I went through the grief, I went through the loss, I went through the sadness of my kids growing up in a broken home, and I went through so much. But now my kids are adults, they're in a good place. We've processed, we've moved forward, and it's really nothing to grieve about. So I think and I wanted to see if I could identify why marriage was not a thing for me anymore. And I think that's the only thing I came up with. Maybe I just wanted to be a mom. I wanted to raise my kids in a home with a mom and a dad, and I didn't get that. So I'm guessing, well, what's the point? That's kind of what I've been able to discover about myself joining this class. But as far as grief, I don't feel like I'm grieving. I feel like I'm in a peaceful place right now.
Okay. So as we move forward, we're gonna focus on, I'm gonna ask the class to focus on either a situation or a person, a loss, and it can be a disappointment in maybe, like for me, like my dad wasn't what I had hoped for, and as I've grown older, I've become more and more aware of what a healthy daddy-daughter relationship would have looked like, could have looked like. And
Okay.
so even though I wasn't like necessarily grieving, I mean, I had my dad was present, but emotionally he wasn't capable. And so it took a little deeper work for me to process that and to go through the motions of grieving the loss of what I wished I would have had. So maybe if you can conceptualize it in that way,
Okay.
maybe that will help you settle on one particular relationship. And if my guess is that if you're struggling with wanting to stay married or be married, or at the, you're already divorced, I understand.
Right.
So, but, and I was too, right? So, but a lot of the things that happened for me really did stem from the things that were missing in my relationship with having a dad that could model certain things. So I just want to encourage you to think about a relationship that was significant to you or a life circumstance, because it'll help you to be a little more focused as you go through the next few assignments. It'll make a little more
Okay.
sense to you. So,
Okay.
okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for
Uh-huh.
sharing that. Okay. Who else? We have 2 more people, 3 more people, actually. If you guys don't want to share, that's totally okay. That's not a problem. I will go ahead and move forward. I'll give you another minute or so to chime in and let me know if you want to share anything. No? Okay, that's totally fine. So you guys have already really read a lot about the STIRBs. Do you have any questions about energy relieving behaviors? I don't want to go through like a whole lecture on it because I feel like you guys have already kind of got a handle on it. So I'm going to go into the loss history graph, which is the next thing you guys are going to be doing. And you're going to be focused more on it. Okay. So we have 2 graphs that we do in our class. Okay. One of them, the first one, is a loss history graph. And that graph, and Charlotte, I think this might be helpful for you. That graph goes through the entirety of our life, and we graph the losses that we've had categorically, right? So a lot of you guys have said, I've had one loss every year, it seems like, right? One disappointment every year. So what I want you to do is I want you to graph all of the different losses that you've had in your life. Okay. Don't try too much to focus on one particular person or loss for this particular graph. Okay. So I have the loss of my marriage. I have the loss of maybe a job that I wanted. I have the loss of a parent. So it's going to be lots of different types of losses. Okay. So what I want you to do is do a graph that encompasses all of them. And then what I want you to do is just start from the very beginning. So it'll be like the first loss that you can remember. And you're going to it's going to be a line. And then you're just going to tag it, loss of Aunt Betty, whatever, right? I was 4 years old. So just kind of notate how old you were and what the loss was. And it's just for you, right? I'm going to have you guys look through these and process them with me, kind of like we did today. But I want you to go through the loss history graph, because we're going to take that graph and then we're going to hone in on one particular loss that was particularly significant for you. Most of you guys know which one you want to process, but that's okay. But we want to still do a graph that includes all of the different losses that you've had over your lifetime. it's actually quite significant to do this because most people don't realize how much loss they've had, or they think they know they've had a lot of loss, but it's really different when you see it in black and white. And part of this process is that your memory will get jogged as you do your graph. Different things will come up that you maybe hadn't thought about in 20 years, right? If it comes up, it's your subconscious's way of allowing you to kind of get it out there, right? Because so much that happens with loss is that it kind of like, Liliana was talking about, it gets pushed down. And so we don't even recognize it as a loss, maybe, but your subconscious will help remember, oh, remember that time when, dad told me that I wasn't smart, right? Or, whatever it is. And might be something really tiny and really insignificant, but I want you to put it on there. You might wake up in the middle of the night and remember something that you hadn't remembered in years, right? I had one time I was doing my loss history graph, which is all of my losses. And I remembered when I was like 7 years old and I ran into a plate glass window. And it was so traumatic for me. But I hadn't thought about that in 30 years. So whatever comes up, go ahead and include it on your loss history graph. Okay. So here are some of the guidelines for it. Okay. You may laugh or you may cry. And either one is okay. You may not have any emotion at all, and that's okay too. As people start to share their loss history graph, we want to make sure that we're able to like hold that space for them and allow them to process it as much as they can. And just keep in mind that all of us have losses, and keep in mind that, like, kind of what we talked about the first week, right? That we don't want to judge somebody else's loss as being more significant or less significant than our own, right? So we want to kind of just keep reminding ourselves of some of those parameters too. So, okay. Does anybody have any questions about it? About the loss history graph? No?
Is that similar to a genogram?
It is not similar to a
Okay.
genogram in that a genogram is going to connect
Oh,
people
yeah.
and
Okay.
dynamics
Yeah,
with
okay.
certain narratives.
Right.
This is a little more simple in that you're just looking at an event,
Okay,
and
yeah, all right.
if it's something that is grievous to you or something that was a loss on any level, then you just want to notate it.
Okay.
So your graph is going to be a line, and then it's just going to have tick marks, and every single tick mark
Mhm.
could be a notation of some sort with whatever it is that you feel like you want to remember or process.
Okay.
Okay, I do have a question. Do you have like an example of one or like a template?
Let me see if I can find a template for you. In the
Okay.
homework, when I send it to you, it will have one in there.
Okay. Can I make sure, can I put my email in there just in case I miss it? Because do we have
Sure.
homework? I know we were supposed to read to chapter 8.
Have you been getting my emails with the homework?
I got one the other day. Tell me about the tonight. And then I believe I got the one when we read to chapter 8. And
Okay.
so,
Okay, yeah, so you've gotten them. There've been 2
okay,
because this is week 3. So
right.
we're going to go into week, right. So I'm sort of preloading it for you in terms of
Okay.
what's coming. So yeah, when you read the book, and then the homework will have the book chapters on there. So
Okay.
when you read the book, it will kind of explain what I've sort of explained.
Okay.
What I wanted to clarify, because people do get confused, is there are 2 graphs. So the first one is categorically all of your losses. The second one is called a relationship graph. That is particularly that's specifically for the relationship or the situation that you're going to process. So many, like when you look at your lost sister graph, you're going to have lots of different entries on there. And you can use the method I'm teaching you guys. You can use it for every single entry you have. But we
Okay.
take one at a time.
I'm seeing it in chapter 9. It kind of gives an example. So
Yes.
I'll just use that part.
Yeah. And the homework
Okay.
we'll explain it a little more too. But a lot of times people get confused because it's like, wait, how many graphs do we have? But we have a lot. We have a lost history, which is the whole like historical template of your whole life, basically, of all the losses. And then we have a relationship graph, and that's going to help you as we finish up completion of that loss. Okay. But we're not doing the relationship graph this week. We're just doing the loss history. Make sense? Okay. Any more questions?
Yes, Catherine, I have a question. I'm getting your emails, but I don't have an attachment to show what the homework is. I just went ahead and just worked ahead.
Okay. So so the homework should either be an attachment or it's in the email.
Yeah, the only thing that I received was your email, and it just gave us the link to sign in to for our Zoom tonight.
Okay. So I'm going to do it right now, you guys. As soon as we're done, as soon as we get off, I'm going to send it right away. If you don't get something from me right away with the homework attached, can you email me and let me know?
Sure.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. I'll do it right now so that, and you're going to need a little time to work on this one. Give yourself some time. And I want to encourage you guys, take some time, some downtime. Don't like try to cram it in before, in between, TV shows or something. Take some time, give yourself some, really sit down and calm yourself, do some deep breathing, and then just allow yourself to have some time, because this is really important for you as you move forward. You deserve it, right? So let's value this process as much as we can. Okay.
So Catherine, I did the lost history chart.
Okay.
The lost history gap, I did that. But now you want us to go back and you want us to add what emotion we had at that particular time period.
Not quite yet.
Okay.
Right. If you want to, you can. That's totally up to you. Right.
Okay.
But right now we're just going to do the graph. We're just going to get it on paper.
Okay, fine.
And you're my overachiever.
Well, when I saw the email, I thought, well, I'm not sure how far I'm supposed to go in the book.
Oh.
So I read a lot. And so I just started reading and I just made notes and I thought, okay, I'll be ready for wherever we go.
So here's the deal, you guys. And I was going to say this sooner. It's so funny because a lot of times I'll say, well, how did you feel about that? Right. And somebody will say, well, I was thinking that I was upset or I was disappointed or I was right. Did you hear that? Did you catch it? How do you feel? And well, I was thinking this is how I felt. Do you see the difference? Right. We all do that because most of us have not been conditioned to know that how we feel is okay, much less to be able to put language to it. So I'm going to challenge you guys to move out of the cognitive part of yourself, the part that thinks and makes sense of everything and finds all the answers, right, Suzanne? Right. So, and I want to help you guys move from that strength and really start to ask yourself, how do I feel? And you know what? For me, a long time, the answer was numb. I just don't feel anything. Right. And that's okay. It's honest.
I think in the faith-based community, if I may say that, and I try to say that sensitive as possible, that I think we kind of jump to, the Lord know that I needed that, or the Lord allow me to go through that. So it's kind of challenging to really, especially in the faith-based community, to really own one's emotion, because it's almost as if you do it, you're committing a sacrilegious act to saying, the Lord, you don't argue with God, you don't dare question God, why you allow me to go through this. So it's really challenging. I thought I was the only one, but by listening to the group this evening, I said, oh my God, I thought it was just in my culture alone. And in my faith-based community, where you say, the Lord give it and the Lord take it. At least Job said, naked I came into the world and naked I'm going out. And the more I find people say that, it's the more angry sometimes I become. I'm not angry as much as I used to be, because now I know that God wants me to own those feelings and to really express them.
And he gave them to you.
And he gave them to me.
They're created by him. He created those feelings. So I think it's been a big loss to us as believers and within the church community to allow ourselves to be robbed just so that we have the right face. Right, Nancy? Just so that yeah, because I don't think that was ever God's intention. I'm really struggling with whether I should share this or not. But I saw on a pastor that I follow a little boy, a boy in India about 12 years old, who would not renounce his faith, and he was being tortured and was killed. And it was all there to see. And I've really been emotionally very much struggling with the suffering that this little boy had to go through, and really asking God, how am I supposed to be okay with that, And the bottom line is that that's a very real, visceral response. I'm human, and God gave me the emotion to be angry on behalf of this child and to hold that space. And I don't have the answer, but the emotions that I'm feeling, even in the moment, as I'm processing this, and as I think about, I hear about you guys who have lost your homes, we're human. And I think our emotions are something that we need to protect and we need to value. He values them, so we should. Yeah, sorry to end it on such a sad note, but it's just something personally I've been going through. So yeah. Okay, you guys, so we'll see you next week. And be authentic. All right, you guys, talk to you soon. See you next week.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Kathy. Enjoyed
Thank
the
you.
class. Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.